Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Paper Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's continue the whole situation with Mac and Dylan, and it is just like the cutest thing, them playing, like, they're using those illegal fire rockets and stuff. And, it is this really interesting thing where he like tries to open up to her and he's apologetic because she's like, yeah, you know what, make this moment better, smokes. He's like, no, that's bad for you. She's like, I'm already dead. He's like, yeah, and you know, it's not like they'll kill me. It's like, yeah, back when smoking was super bad for you. But she's like, well, you're the one that got me addicted. He's like, no, I didn't. He's like, yeah, you ended up hitting me because I didn't heal enough. He's like, wow, you're right, I was such a dick. She's like, yeah, you're right. But he's like, no, like, I mean, seriously, like, he's like, it's only now that as an adult I realize how terrible, like, our situation, like, the violence. Because they talked about it, about their dad being a drunk, and it seemed like he must have gotten, like, physically abusive. And for him, like, you know, I think it's just, you know, it trickles down. Like, what he got from their dad, he kind of dished out to Mac, too. So he even apologized. He's like, Mac, I shouldn't have bullied you. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, what our father put us through, what I put you through, is inexcusable. And I wish I could have taken it all back. So I legitimately am sorry for not being a better, like, now that he's raising his own kids, he realizes, like, right, like, how wrong their father was when it came to them. We even found out that, well, for one, he's like, yeah, dad lives in a trailer park, and last time I heard, he lives in a trailer park in Florida. We don't talk much anymore. And found out that Dylan named one of his daughters Alice after their dad's girlfriend. I mean, I guess maybe she became a stepmom. I don't think they were married. I think that was just the person. Well, they might be married because all Max said was like, is she still with Alice? I kind of liked her. And it's like, wait, you named one of your kids after Alice? It's like, yeah, when you were sick, Alice never left your side. And after, you know, Alice was actually there for me. So he kind of wanted, and he's like, now I get to be there for you. I was like, I actually think that's really sweet because almost Max was like, wait, Alice? Wait, it's like, not, once again, it's like, a lot can change in 4 years, and her circumstances, her getting sick, like, it changed a lot of people. It changed Dylan. It changed, Alice being there and being supportive and everything, because we don't know what their biological mom's circumstances are. Like, did she leave them? Did she die? Like, they've kind of skated around that conversation, but I love that, like, Dylan's like, yeah, and he's like, do you want to open up, tell me anything, like, I can apologize for, just tell me how you're feeling. And Mac is like, she couldn't, like, keep it serious. She had to be like, oh, why you're such a gay? He's like, well, you can't say that, that's super fit. She's like, well, what can I say? He's like, well, you can say this and that. And she's like, oh, like, do your children know that you're a blah 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 shit eater? He's like, of course. Do your people back at the hospital know that you're a blah 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 shit eater? And he's like, yeah, of course. It's on my business cards. But it's like, cause it was like she couldn't handle the sappy stuff because she was like, why are you getting so lame all of a sudden? And so when she's hanging around their daughters, his daughters, the fact is, Alice is more like her to some extent, but then, like, his older child, Wilder, it's just kind of like, she's like hoity-toity, and I think for Mac, it just reminds her of all the people who are high and mighty, like, growing up, who treated her and the rest of her family like dirt. So that's why she looks at Wilder as just kind of like, oh, you're hoity-toity and stuff, and then she doesn't like the way her brother, like, in her mind, it's like, oh, you turn into such a limp dick punk. But for him, it's like, the fact of the matter is, I don't want to talk and act like that around my children. Like, yes, I am still the brother you know, but I also grew up. I can be both. The fact of the matter is, and he also talked to her about, like, no, like, don't stop talking like you're dead. You're not. And when given enough time, we'll say, like, oh, your mom had some kind of accident, so we're going to be adopting you. And she's like, oh, that's going to make you my dad? She's like, oh, that's weird. It's like, yeah. But he's like, yeah, eventually it won't be. We could get you enrolled into school, get you into some extracurriculars. For him, it's all about, we are given something that no one else has ever been given, a second chance. And he's like, I am not going to waste that. I was like, it was such a beautiful moment, because even Mac was taken back by it, because it's like, I think it's still hard for her to rationalize, like, this is her brother. Like, he guts past all the bullshit. Like, obviously she's lashing out like, oh, you're embarrassed by me, ashamed. He's like, I would never be ashamed of you, Mac. I love you. And I'm like, it's such a sweet, beautiful moment. And sadly had to be cut short because, Adina Porter's character. I don't know if it's Prios. What was it? Prioris or Prioris. She ends up tracking down Mac. I don't think they're legally allowed to kill anyone unrelated to the time travelers. Probably would have hurt them though. But it's like, yeah, the whole, I mean, as she threatened that guy before, it's like, oh, I can hurt you and then wipe your memory. Wiping your memory is the key, but hurting you is just kind of an extra bonus. So she could have hurt the rest of that family. So so Mac ended up having to leave, despite it's like, right, she felt good because like this is the home she wants to stay with, like her brother, who's more of a father to her than her own father, being with a family that's actually nice. And yeah, it has its, hiccups, but it's still way better than their family. And, because also it means going back to a time where 4 years from now, you're going to die. Like, you're going to get sick and die. Like, that's something I'm really going to be interested to see if she says anything to anyone next episode, because I don't think she is. I mean, she had this like heartbreaking moment when her and KJ were on the bike, and she was holding on to KJ, and she was crying because you never see her that vulnerable. Because for her, it's like, once again, it's like the reality of when I go back to my own time, I'm going to die, but I'm not going to ruin my brother's life. Like, he's good, and I don't want anything to happen to him after he made this promise of wanting, like, oh, we can be a family and everything. Like, this is a great life. Everything's good here. Don't have to deal with my dad's BS, plus my bro being a doctor means maybe I don't have to die, So there's all of that. And speaking of KJ, I thought something was so fascinating. I mean, the fact is, more so than anything, she didn't want to leave Mac behind. So maybe that's a little indicative of what I'm thinking. But when she talked to Dylan's wife, it's like, oh yeah, like she's lucky to have a girlfriend. Like, she's like, girlfriend? No. I mean, we're not like that. We're just friends. I mean, we're barely even that. And the fact is, she got like very fidgety about that. I was like, wait, do you like Mac? I was like, because now part of me wonders. Like, looking back at that story she told in episode 2 where she was like, oh, yeah, like, your brother was picking up coins and you pushed him in. And Mac was like, what, are you stalking me or something? It's like, no, I was shopping with my mom. I was like, did she pay extra attention because she likes Mac? She has for a while, and that made her kind of... That's what I'm wondering if that's kind of indicative of. It feels like that could be. Especially because there was this conversation between her and Aaron where... because Aaron kept being like, right, don't you want to see your future self? But she's like, no, I don't want to. It's like, I don't care. It's like, well, no, like, that's impossible. How do you not care? Because for her, it's like, if my mom had her way, then that means I ended up the way she wanted me to be, and now I don't want that. And part of me wonders, like, obviously it's like your parents kind of shaping you, and who, like, you don't get to be your own person. You got to be what they want you to be. So once again, kind of playing into, like, her family isn't the great thing, like, obviously, Mac said all that stuff about her and her family, but it's like every family has their problems no matter what their circumstances are. Because no one knows Kate, because KJ hasn't really talked about her circumstances. But part of me wonders is like, could that also play into that? Like, she has to be a certain way, she has to be a certain person, and be what her family wants her to be. So that's, I don't know if I'm reading too much into that or not, but I was almost like, it almost seemed like the fact is she's like, no, we're just like, she stammered when she was saying it, and almost like she was embarrassed. And I think maybe when Mac was holding her and crying, like, maybe it made her think about, like, well, for one, she's never seen Mac vulnerable like that, but also maybe it kind of got her thinking more about, like, maybe there was some truth to that. I mean, I'm very interested in explore that and see if that's where that's going. Like I said, if I'm just reading too much into that. I do love the whole... the giant transformer, as they put it, is a time machine. It's actually kind of a weapon. They're meant to get it back to 99 to kind of help in the war front. And because she synced with that device, present day Aaron is the only one who can control it. Which she's like, nope. For one, I'm not going to drag 12-year-old kids into a war. But it's like, right, we could just pop back to 88, drop them off, and everything's fine. But it's like, yeah, but then you get into that complicated territory of, yeah, but what about us? Talking about her and Larry. So, ultimately, Tiffany ended up kind of bringing up, like, the time travel thing. It's like, well, why don't you go back in time to 88, save Hack and the other person, and that way they can complete the mission by going to 1999. Bing, bam, boom, everyone wins. That's kind of her. And Larry kind of can't fight that reasoning. I'm like, well, I guess he's not well versed in all things time travel. Tiffany's just really smart, but it feels like I'm like, well, it's not that complicated. But then, I mean, none of them know I mean, I think that's also the thing, too, for Larry. It's like, it could work, but even then, he's like, there's complications, because time travel, there's a complicated nuance to that, because it's like, right, because you never know what the ripple effect is going to be, because once you go back and do that, you're creating, like, a paradox, or maybe the whole thing is like, well, maybe it's a loop, maybe it was always meant to happen. You know, I mean, them being here already is already a paradox. So that just enters that complicated territory. I'm curious to see, could that plan necessarily work? And so Erin's learning how to pilot, you know, getting like full blown motion. Like she puts her hand in the glove and it moves the hand. I'm like, yo, I've never seen the movie, but how very Pacific Rim, like Jaegers or, I mean, Jesus, there's so many like anime, you know, obviously the systems are different. Gundams, obviously Trails of Cold Steel, the video games, because it makes me think of that, because there's giant mechs in that. Spoilers. Was it Vandred or was it Vanguard? I think it was Vandred was the name of an anime that had like was a science fictional like space mech suit series as well. Code Geass, like the list can go on and on. Interesting about the Code Geass thing is like it's the mechs, the nightmares only exist in the anime. They don't exist in the manga, if I remember correctly. I thought that was such an interesting thing. I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Like such a big thing. I mean, it's not. I mean, but you know, that's a good chunk of that story like revolves around nightmares, and for them to only be in the anime is so fascinating. I mean, once again, maybe that's misinformation. Regardless, putting that aside. But Larry's teaching her everything she can, but at the same time, Erin's got to deal with the fact that her sister Missy showing up. And I love the whole her and Larry. It's like, oh, Larry would be happy. But I was like, wait, who's Larry? And it's like, she's like, shit. And it's like, right, her and Larry have to pretend to be a couple, and they're so awkward. It's like, oh, I love you, Larry. And you're just like, and they're like turning towards each other, and he's just like kind of awkwardly kissing her forearms. Like, it's so good. Erin wanted to kind of meet Missy because it's like, right, no matter what our issues are, this could be an opportunity to bridge that gap. Because we had that opening in the past where a young Missy and Erin were playing that game of like, oh, like, you know, oh, you're going to marry Alf and you're going to have like 100 babies or something like that. Because we find out that Missy is actually a pilot. She went into the military. And it's like, yep. And Erin obviously holds a little bit of resentment for that because it's like, cool. Yep, she's a real hero, and her younger self is kind of proud of her, but I think for older Erin, it's like, oh, and as she said, like, don't call me old Erin, I don't like that. It's just like the whole thing of, right, you had these dreams that you aspired to, and life didn't work out that way for you, and your little sister is like the prodigal child, the golden child of the family, so it casts like a wider shadow on you to some extent. Because Erin also said this thing of like, right, okay, let me tell you, Missy wasn't really there when Mom was sick. And I thought that was interesting because later on, because at first I was like, is Erin saying that when in actuality, she's the one that wasn't there when Missy took care of her mom? I thought that was going to be the twist, but it's like, no. Erin kind of warped this story because it's like, for Missy, it's like, I wanted to be there with Mom, but you kind of halted to yourself. Like, you kind of boxed me out. You never reached out to me. So, but, and Erin's defense, she's like, but you had a husband, a career, kids. I didn't want to, you know, and it's like, right, you're kind of lucky that I did it. She's like, lucky? Oh, I should be thanking you. She's like, that's not what I meant. It's like, yeah, thank you, Erin, for removing any opportunity for me to be with Mom in her final years. Because I think Erin, it's a little bit of a self-hatred thing, or like no self-confidence, where Erin's like, I'm the one that had no life. Like, because I think it's also like, right, I'm the oldest sibling. It's up to me. I was all like, ever since a very young age, she would always do what she could to support her mom. We already saw that in the first episode. So I think she kind of carried a lot of that with her. Maybe like a lot of guilt of, I wasn't who I wanted to be and who I dreamed of being, but Missy has, and I don't want to take away from her life. I'll take care of Mom. Like, it has to be my responsibility. Like, I think she was trying her best of like, right, I'm going to take care of Mom on my own so Missy can live her life and not, you know, for one, so she doesn't have to see Mom like that. She has better memories of Mom and not seeing her in a very bad state like that. But it is still like, right, I missed those final years with Mom because you kind of ostracized me. So, and I think it sadly always just comes down to perspective. And I think So I think it kind of shows things like maybe from Erin's perspective, it's like, oh, like Missy never really helped out. She also constantly throws in her, which I can understand that as from a sibling perspective of like, right, having your like just because like, oh, are you taking your meds? Is like really you're really saying that, you're really asking that? Fine, I am. Because young Erin hasn't really asked her older self about all that she's going through. Like the fact is she's on medications, like life hasn't really been the easiest, and not just her mom, but it seems like there's other facets and aspects to it that she really hasn't talked about. So, but having your sibling, your sister, because I think for her it makes her feel even lower, like, oh yeah, I'm the one that has to take meds, I'm the one that doesn't have like the great career in life, that the life and career that, like, not necessarily, but like the life that she wanted, a career woman, married, kids, having it all. I wanted that, and I'm not living that. Plus, I'm on medication. I think it causes a lot of insecurities. Once again, I think her little sister, casts a large shadow on her, and I think that kind of makes her just feel like, oh, like she feels so defeated. I think she's just living life day by day, but like I feel like she's kind of lost a little bit of her luster and her spark that she had at such a young age, just because, well, let's face it, being realistically here, life can beat you down in certain regards. So life kind of maybe beat her down with just everything, with her mom, and just things just not all going that well all around, so. Because Erin, like, ended up hearing some of that conversation, and at one point in the closet, she was trying to like talk to her older self, and I was like, there was blood on her chair. I was like, what's that from? I was like, oh, is it her period? Like, I was like, and she's potentially going through this alone too. I don't know if she like it's. She recognized it, so I don't know if it's like if it's happened before. Because like they're 12, and obviously, because puberty hits differently at different ages for boys and girls, right? God, my biology, I've not taken biology since like 10th grade, so I don't remember the ins and outs of all of that. But it's like, yeah, it's around that age. So, but I'm thinking like, right, she was going to talk to Erin about it because, like, right, she doesn't have her actual mom there to kind of help her through that. And it's like, right, she kind of gets a paper towel, I think, kind of just deals with it on her own. So we'll see how that kind of plays out, or not, unless that's in relation to something else. Because I'm assuming it's got to be in relation to, like, maybe her period or something. Because I was wondering, like, at first I was like, oh, could it be the wound is actually opening up, that it's not like a permanent heal or something? But it seems like it's the former, not the latter. Either way, there's also the whole Tiffany thing, which I thought was fascinating. Larry was actually impressed with her because she lined up and mapped out, like, okay, this is when things went differently, which I thought was so interesting because, like, obviously, once again, Larry even explains, like, even they don't have a full comprehension of it, but it turns out I was right. The purple clouds and stuff like that is a mechanism when they do, like, a massive mind wipe in an area of effect. And so, what was it, like, ablution or something like that is, ablution or something like that is what they call when they do, like, a memory wipe. But even Tiffany's like, but yeah, we were in the area, so why were we not affected by that? It's like that kind of puts people in the haze. The actual memory wipe takes place on the ship. He actually gave a reason why he thought, like, maybe this is the reason why you guys were protected from it, but who knows. But he tries to open up to Tiffany, because he kind of yelled at her because he's like, because it made him go like, right, you are kids. I'm getting frustrated with you, but because he talks a little about his own circumstances. He was only here on this farm because his grandfather pushed him for it, which I kind of get it. Like, my farming is kind of in my family. It's kind of what my grandfather did. It's also what my dad does on the side, and it's kind of something he wants to say, hey, do you want to take over the family business in that regard? So there's that element to it that it's like, right, he kind of got stuck with all of that, and he kind of resented his grandfather, and I love that line that's the title of the episode. It was never about the corn. It was just like having to be stuck here. But he's like, yeah, in the end, it was all worth it, because if he had been like taking note of every change to, like, the weather, even the smallest differences and stuff, he wouldn't have become aware and wouldn't be in a position to be involved in things that he is now, because he's able to he's in a position where he's labeled out the folds, like the folds being the temporal space opening that leads to time travel, the back doors to time travel, in fact. And he ended up coding everything, and he opens up to Tiffany about this, which makes me go like, okay, eventually Larry's going to die, and he's probably going to die without telling them the code, and Tiffany's going to be the one that ends up figuring out. The fact is he opened up to her about it. I think that's where we can potentially see that going. But obviously Mac and KJ hadn't made it back yet, so they're like, man, we might have to leave them behind. But even Larry's like, I don't want to. They are kids. And she's like, you just noticed that? He's like, no, but you were right. The fact is, we're damned if we do, damned if we go. We still, like, they would probably be safer if they stayed, but there's going to be bad stuff no matter which way we go, whether we go there or we stay here. Luckily, KJ and Matt got it here in time, but Prioris was right on the trail. Luckily, they got the mech out, and I'm like, dude, I cannot believe there's like a freaking mech in this show. I just would never expected that. They used a mech in their time traveling. Prioris ends up waiting there, and lo and behold, the grandfather shows up, played by none other than freaking, was it Jason Masukos? I'm probably like butchering his name. I'm like, really? Derek? It's kind of one of the roles I know from past. Also, like voice acting wise, Rexplosion on Invincible, Prime Video connection there. So I was like, but I wasn't expecting him being like, oh, I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. And part of me was wondering, like, oh, is he going to, like, hurt her? Kill? I was like, I don't think he's going to kill her. But I was actually kind of scared because I was like, I don't know what you're going to do to her. And it just cuts to the curtains. I'm like, okay. She's okay for now, potentially. But, just like Larry has said, now that even if they get the girls back to 1988, they are now outside of their time. And now the old watch is going to be able to track them. So it's, once again, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. So it is definitely going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. There's going to be some wonkiness with the time travel. There has to be, because Tiffany never met her adult self. Neither did KJ. I mean, granted, her parents got mind wiped present day, but still, like, like, the fact that she doesn't even want to meet her present day self makes you think, like, okay, there's going to be something with that. Like, and Tiffany is so gun-ho about meeting her present day self. Also turns out that Dylan didn't get his mind wiped. I mean, there's always a possibility they will wipe his memory, just that's going to be off screen or something, which is sad because he had this moment with his sister that once that's taken away, he'll go back to believing like, oh, my sister died. Like he won't have that hope, that second chance he was talking about, Either way, I'm very, very fascinated to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.